answers to what is this all about? Am I crazy? Was it a dream? What is it all about? And just knowing that other people had had this experience as well made them feel much more comfortable with it. And we were able to tell them some very validating things, that you're not the only one, other people have this, people who aren't crazy have this, and that was quite helpful to them, I think.
I was wandering around kind of telling my story, my near-death experience, to just about anyone that would listen, and an aunt mentioned to me that she heard about a support group that studies this phenomena, and they're trying to find out what causes it, what's it all about. Well, up to that point, I never even heard of a near-death experience. I didn't have a label for what happened to me. It was just a beautiful experience.
I was left with the idea that I was the only one who had had this experience. I didn't know what it was, and whenever I would try to even talk myself out of it and say, oh, that was just a hallucination or a dream, I knew that wasn't true. So I just kind of put it in it didn't fit into any pigeonhole in my mind, so I just left it there somewhere, floating around, not attached to anything. And about 4 or 5 years later, I remember I was in the dentist's office, and I was reading a magazine, and it mentioned Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and people who should have died but didn't, and what happened to them. And I remember being so startled that, my God, they're talking about the same thing that I went through.
Well, very often people, once they have had a near-death experience, had a hard time readjusting to a, quote, normal life after that. The NDE taught them a lot of things that they didn't know about themselves, and sometimes made great changes in their attitudes about themselves, about life, in their belief systems, in their sense of values, in the sense of what's important in their life, what's important to spend your time on. And as a result of this, sometimes people couldn't go back to the lifestyles they had before.
One son was somewhat skeptical and probably fell into the negative side. Yeah, I heard about this, but it's always in a Journal Enquirer or some other. Yellow journalism covers it all the time. And it has been, expounded upon in newspapers such as that, and, geez, don't tell anyone you know me type thing.
Not immediately, but I would say within a month or two after the near death, I became increasingly aware that things were different with me.
Yeah, well, 8 years I didn't talk about it, and I was going through an awful lot of rehab. I had quite a bit of back physical therapy and all kinds of the reparative surgery, so I didn't talk about it much. And I was starting to express it to a few friends, and then when I got into graduate school, into physical therapy, actually to study what I was given so much of through my rehab, I ran into some people there, and I was becoming more open to what I had been through, trying to understand the human body, and actually when I was dissecting cadavers to really see where I was injured, which it was really pretty significant to be able to actually go into a human body and see where all the injuries were. So it was time to really deal with it and talk about it.
My wife, whom I've been married to for 34 years, I love her very dearly, and she just doesn't want this to be part of her life. I'm sorry that she doesn't. I feel very, very bad that she can't feel some of the good that I feel, and I just don't force it on her. If she doesn't want me to talk to people about it in our home, I don't. I mean, I'm still here on Earth to do Earth things, and one of them is to maintain a happiness with my wife, and one of the ways to do that is to kind of steer her clear of my near-death experience and the goings-on with it.
Every second Monday of the month, hidden away in the University of Connecticut Medical Center in Storrs, Connecticut, people gather, some to sort out the past, others to discover a future, and all for the comfort. The meeting is the International Association of Near-Death Studies Support Group. Many have had a near-death experience. All are interested in the topic.
When I got to the hospital, originally I walked by the room and I heard someone saying, "Well, my name is so-and-so, and I haven't had one," and so I thought it was an AA meeting, and I just kept on walking, and I couldn't find the room, so I eventually made it back there, and that what they were talking about was that, well, I haven't had a near-death experience.
since my near-death experience, there were just so many unanswered things. And sometimes feeling uncomfortable because there was no one else to talk about this with. So when as I say, at this first meeting and meeting people that they were talking about my experience, they felt the same thing.
I sought out the group and I found it. And oh, it was so beautiful having people accept your story as, oh yes, it does happen, it did happen.
Everyone in the support group that's had a near-death experience, or even people who've been going to the support group and haven't had this near-death experience but are really open to it, the similarity is there's just so much love in that room.
But not all people who have had a near-death experience are so willing to talk. A few people report terrifying confrontations with death.
There seem to be three different types of terrifying or frightening near-death experiences. One type is virtually the same as the prototypical pleasant, beautiful, heavenly experience, but the people experience it as frightening. They may talk about leaving their bodies, going through the tunnel, confronting the light, but that's a frightening experience for them. And that at some point in the experience, they realize they can't fight anymore and they give up. And as soon as they give up, it becomes a beautiful experience for them. It's pleasant, it's peaceful, it's calm. A second type of unpleasant experience is a sense of endless void, of nothingness, of eternal nothingness, where there's no sight, no sound, nothing, just the individual, whatever that is at that point, without any body, and eternal nothingness. And that can be a very terrifying experience. People who have this often tell us that not only did it seem there was nothing then, but they felt like their whole life had been a fantasy and never existed, that nothing ever existed. And that's the type of experience that you can't imagine just sitting here talking about it now. It's utterly terrifying. A third type of unpleasant experience is the one that has frank, hellish imagery. People talk about demons, about pits, about fire and brimstone. And while these seem to be less common than the other types, they do occur to people.
What happens when we die? Only the dead can say. The 5 subjects interviewed here have had brushes with death, which have all changed their lives.
I felt within myself that I would accept whatever it was that God wanted of me. And the next thing I know, I was back on earth and, back in my circumstances, and just totally amazed.
I don't fear death. In fact, I don't believe that I even feared death before my fall, but now I have even a more profound sense of peace about it.
I would like not, at my death, to have any mourners. It should be I that would do the grieving, that I had to leave them and reside at a far better place.
This experience was a wonderful, wonderful gift that was given to me. I wound up being able to look at myself totally different. Whenever I kind of get lost, I pull back to seeing me through the eyes of this other being. And it's wonderful.
But there's such a wonderful world on the other side, and it's nothing to fear, and it's actually really, I can't wait, but it's not my time yet either. I've got more work to do here.